Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the HMGS Oh, geez, Kai. HMGS Roundtable, hosted by No Dice, No Glory. Today, we have our final speaker after 4 days, and it's probably one of the best, one of the ones I was most excited for. We have Rufus Devane, also from Firelock Games. This has been a big Firelock event, so, thank you guys for your payment. Here to talk about Blood and Valor, the first book, and we're here to spoil the second book. So welcome, Rufus.
Yes, glad to be here. Glad to talk about what's going on with Blood and Valor.
So let's talk about where we are, Blood and Valor now. The book has been out since December.
Yeah, well, early January, late December, yep.
Early January, late December. Folks were building armies, then COVID hit. And then based on the website, people are still building armies. Does this kind of, this was the worst time to come out with a new game.
Yeah, unfortunately, we were planning on doing the first Blood and Valor tournament at Adepticon, but that got canceled, as we all know. And then, it slowed it down. It is pretty exciting seeing people actually building armies and stuff. There was one guy on Facebook that built like 1,000 points. I mean, 1,000-point army. And I asked him, did you ever play the game? He goes, no, I haven't even played the game yet. So that's how excited he was. But yeah, people are building armies. It's frustrating on everyone. I know everybody's frustrated. You want to play the game, you want to get involved. But there are some people playing, with their friends and stuff, fortunately.
So let's continue with book one. You guys have seen a lot of comments. What are the comments that kind of make you smile inside, and which ones give you food for thought, like, geez, maybe I should have thought of that?
Well, one of them that came up is one of the food for thought ideas was with the stormtroopers, giving them MP-18s. The reason I did that is to make them a more interesting unit in the game, so you have a shorter range but higher firepower. But if I change it, I'm going to, instead of writing MP-18 submachine guns, I'm going to write MP-18 submachine guns / pistols, hand grenades, like an assault type thing. Because there was a lot of people talking about it, going back and forth about how many there were and all that stuff. It's meant to be representative of the close combat speciality of the stormtroopers. But it's not a huge thing. I just want to make sure that people, if they want to make a stormtrooper holding a grenade and a pistol, that's just as acceptable as one holding an MP-18. It's not as super WYSIWYG. So I don't like games like that. That if you make one minor mistake on your your model, you can't play that because he doesn't have a grenade on his belt, or et cetera, things like that.
Which brings us to an interesting point, and this has come up in a lot of the other discussions about the interaction between developers and the gamers. And a lot of people called it a social contract, and I'll give you a couple of case in points. The first book, you guys couldn't cover everything, but what you guys did cover goes far beyond any other game I can think of that covers that period. But people still wanted this one obscure unit. And I remember telling somebody, dude, it has the Royal Naval Division in it. Most people didn't even know that existed. At some point, gamers have to realize that it's their game, that you and Kai aren't coming to their house to take their dice away if they make changes.
Well, it's also, too, that a lot of people, I think, my concept of when I made the Army list was that if you wanted to, say, play Canadians, right, a Canadian division, you could paint your British troops, your British, Imperial troops of the Empire, the British Empire, as Canadians and say they're Canadians. There's nothing against that. Also, if you want to be super specific and say this particular country only had 8-man squads or 7-man squads, you could build your force to represent 7-man squads if that's what you want to do. Or you could build it and say, I want to put 12 guys in it. Because I look at it as, they're throwing together a group of guys to go accomplish a mission in a small unit's tactics. And if you're a commander and you say, man, I need, I want to get some light machine gun support, they're going to pull a guy in there and add him into that group to do what they want to do. So it's not, you're not building an entire corps or, an army or a battalion. It's much smaller than that. But the reason I made it small in that too is so you can play a World War One game and make it manageable. So you're not trying to play like a huge trench, 2 hours bombardments and all that kind of stuff.
So I know we haven't had a lot of people playing the game, but what is one thing you've seen from comments or posts that surprised you the most about the game?
Well, one guy said that this is real early in it. He said that he had 2 heavy machine guns and his whole army got wiped out like on turn 2. And I was like, oh man, maybe there's something wrong there. And the response was, no, that's perfect, because I ran in the open in front of 2 heavy machine guns. My whole army should have been wiped out. So he liked the fact that that's the way it went down, which was pretty, interesting. Instead of being bitter about losing, he was realizing he was using bad tactics. That's why he lost. Charging a bunch of guys at a heavy machine gun, you shouldn't survive that. So that showed me that the game mechanic was working.
Yeah, people are starting to figure out, which we did in playtesting, that if you put a unit that could be seen by 2 enemy units and they decide to put you in the crossfire, you're retreating pretty quickly, pretty fast. You got to use tactics in this game. And even with a cluttered table, as you go and approach your enemy, you don't want to draw fire from 2 units ever.
Right. Yeah. Well, of course. Well, that's the mantra I have with all games is easy to learn, hard to master. You can learn how to play Blood and Valor in 20 minutes, but then you'll realize you make a lot of mistakes, and that's why you lost the game. The other thing that somebody said recently, which I found kind of amusing, they were talking about Rommel, and Rommel could give out advanced setup to 2 units in his force, right? So he could say these 2 units, which could be very advantageous to whatever scenario you're playing. But Rommel is a 50-point model, so if you're playing 200 points, that's 25% of your force in one model or one little model group. He asked me, can I forward advance Rommel himself? And I said, well, yeah, he's a unit, but you're going to put Rommel out in front of your whole army? And he's like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, because if I was playing someone that pushed their commander all the way out in front, I would have do everything I could do to kill his commander.
Yeah.
So he'll probably learn the hard way if he does that Rommel will get killed. That's 25% of his army is gone, and he's super ineffective because he can't give out command points or orders, and he loses all of Rommel's special abilities.
Yeah, so just like in playtesting, we learned all those little things about the game. So will the community. And so glad you mentioned Rommel. A lot of folks have been very, very excited about all the special characters you put in this game.
Right, yes.
Is there anyone that is your favorite?
Oh, that's an interesting question. My favorite? I don't know. I've never, there's not one that sticks out in my mind as my super favorite one. One I'd like to see people use is Dan Daly, the machine gun guy. For 5 points, you get an extra 2 heavy machine gun shots. I haven't seen people use that from the U.S. force. I don't have a favorite one in general, specifically. They're all kind of unique. I guess probably, believe it or not, I probably like Ataturk, Mustafa Kemal. I think he's interesting. He's interesting in gameplay, of course, but he's also interesting historical figure, or maybe Lawrence of Arabia or someone like that.
Yeah. I think if you look at some of the interesting characters in the game, we all know what Mike Tunez's favorite is. Like we had a Tolkien.
What his new favorite? His new favorite force now. His new favorite force is the Portuguese.
Which we're going to talk about in a minute, because believe it or not, we have an hour and a half.
Okay.
And you can go 2 hours. We have as much as you want. And then, folks, please shoot in questions. I think people are nervous because a lot of folks have met you at events, and they know that there's no short answer with you. But
God. All right. I'll just leave it to yes and no's.
Yeah. So folks, he's being moderated. So we're good. We're good. The second book. So everybody's been asking questions about that. Everybody's been having opinions. I've told people about it, but I'm really haven't said anything because I want you to spoil all the fun for everybody. So let's talk about book 2.
Okay, all right, sure. Well, my concept, with book one is to lay down the main rules of the game and learn how to play it. Obviously, we had to cover certain theaters of combat. Book two is going to be similar to No Peace Beyond the Line, which is from the Blood and Plunder side. The concept of book two is it's going to encompass a lot of army lists, a lot of different, new builds, new ways you could build stuff, to try to touch all those other areas we haven't touched, which would be the Eastern Front, and like I mentioned, Portugal, which was on the Western Front. And then I want to actually get into the Russian Civil War. So, and that just encompasses an incredible amount of different, army lists it builds. And I think right now we're sitting at, we're sitting at like at least 20 more army lists that you could build. Unfortunately, some of these do not have models that are made. Hopefully we could push model makers to make them, but some of them, like the Portuguese, you could actually easily convert British or even American models to be Portuguese. Americans would be a little stretched, but you could do the British. But yes, Spanish Civil War. Yeah, and the other thing I'm going to add into the second book is armor car rules, because a lot of people have been asking for armor cars. And the Belgian force on the Eastern Front is actually going to have armor cars in it that you could take in regular play, not the narrative play scenarios. But I have to be very careful to balance it to make sure that, I don't want to make armor cars. If you bring your armor car force, you just win every game. I'm really looking for trying to make as many, the game as balanced as possible. So when you walk up to that table, you should have as an equal amount of chance of winning as your opponent. It doesn't come down to list building or how much you can afford to buy. The other thing that's going to be in there is I'm going to have rules for weather, for mountain fighting, because the Austro-Hungarians and the Italians fought up in the mountains, the Italian Alps. I'm also going to have rules in there for new scenarios. Let me double check. I wrote a couple cool things in here. Mitch actually mentioned putting medics in it, which I kind of like that idea. Flags or banners for inspirational type stuff, maybe with the Russians. And then the other thing I'm going to add is a lot of new missions. I know a lot of people ask for an armored train, but you can't show up with armored trains and play against armored train. But I am going to make a mission where assaulting an armored train to try to capture it. Also, there was a person on Facebook that came up with the idea of doing tunnel fighting, which I found very interesting, where you would have to kind of create almost like a Space Hulk type board, but have tunnel fighting, which would be kind of a unique scenario. The second book will have a lot of unique kind of scenarios, more narrative play, scenarios that aren't super balanced, but fun to play because they have a lot of variables in them, a lot of rolling, things could happen, weather could change, the tunnel could blow up that you're walking in, the train could drive away, stuff like that.
Let's talk about the list. I think that's what people were dying to know.
Yeah. Well,
that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Well, of course, I'll just go over the list of the ideas we've had so far. And obviously, I'm very open because we're in the development stage of this, that if you have an idea or whatever, put it up on Facebook, say, hey, I thought of this. What do you think? And, I'll seriously look at all of them. So if someone can think of something I haven't thought of, I'm more than willing to throw that in there. But so far,
within reason, right?
Yeah, within reason. Yes, of course. No Zeppelins. I know people ask for Zeppelins. There's going to be no Zeppelins, but so far we have Italy, Austro-Hungary, Russia, which will be Imperial Russian Army, the Red Army for the Russian Civil War, the White factions for the Russian Civil War, the Green Army, which was in the Russian Civil War, the Czech Legion, which was also running around in the Russian Civil War, the Woman's Death Battalion. I was thinking about actually throwing a unit of them, and they might become a unit more than a whole battalion, but we'll figure that out.
That was a great movie. You've seen the movie.
Yes, yeah, I know. And it's real. They really did exist.
Yeah.
Germany on the Eastern Front, of course, and then the Frey Corps, which, for those that don't know who the Frey Corps is, after the war was over, from 1918 to 1919, they had a lot of ex-German military, troops that just were wandering around. They didn't really have direction, and they went up into the Baltics, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and basically were a 30,000 man army running around doing whatever they want during the Civil War, and the Allies allowed this to happen because the Frey Corps were fighting the Soviets or the Soviet Russians. So they were okay with that until about 1920. And then they started disarming all these guys. Serbia, we're going to do Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Japan, Portugal, as I said, Belgian colonial, doing stuff. Belgium's in Africa, and also Finland, because of course Finland. And I want to give a little shout out to, I'm gonna ruin his name, but he's on here. He was watching it.
Marcin Jerkowicz.
Marcin Jerkowicz, yes. Marcin Jerkowicz is Polish, and we are doing a Polish army, and he bent over backwards to do research for me in Poland and help me understand like the Blue Army and characters and famous people in Poland. So that were involved in right after World War I and during World War I. So we're gonna have the Polish, a Polish army too.
Are you ready for some questions? And we can get
sure.
back. So here's one from Phil Waldron, and even if you don't cover the period, he brings up something interesting. I hope to use these rules for the Irish War of Independence, Black and Tan War, which was a guerrilla warfare. And then somebody said a little later on, guerrilla war, Indians, and how to do this. So Phil, if you could throw in there, have you played the game yet? Because I'll give you my impressions, Rufus, and I think the game plays really well in the skirmish environment, what guerrilla warfare is. Once again, it is how you play your forces. But some of the game tests, especially in, he's played it twice, that we played with the African lists, where we had a lot of ambushes, that turned out to be a lot of fun, especially with like the hidden setup and some of the rules. I think the game translates well, but if it goes to, if you feel that there's a better way of portraying that in the game, Phil, or anybody else, as Rufus said, he's all ears, and you can see in the picture he's all ears.
Yeah,
But if you look at the Irish War of Independence, I mean, you actually have most of those forces in there.
Right.
Maybe looking at some guerrilla rules, that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, you could do like a interesting scenario, like a guerrilla type scenario where they almost like they're unseen and then they pop up, and you're like a group trying to find them and stuff like that. Almost like blips on the table, so you don't know where they are. But people have mentioned the the Easter uprising and the Irish War of Independence, which is basically going on. A lot of this was going on during World War I. I don't know. There's definitely models out there for it. You can easily convert civilian type models and all that kind of stuff.
It was
yeah, I just see a thing from him, but it would be interesting to see. That is a possibility, and I'm writing this down. So it is a possibility to add that in there because it is during the time period. I don't know how many people would be actually interested in it. I guess there are people that are interested. I didn't want to offend any of my Irish or British friends.
So there's a bunch of guys from Iron Ivan that used to always put on a flying column raid in the Irish War of Troubles, but we haven't had cons in a long time. My memory's not that good. But, I mean, you look at – so from my impressions of book one, I don't do impressions, is that a lot of gamers will find a period of the war they like. If not, they will soon learn about a period of the war they may not have known about and start gaming that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can see that. Well, people will get their niche, if they find something that's super interesting to them, or maybe one of their family members are involved in that, or people, things like that, and they want to recreate what happened or change history or whatever. It is an interesting thing. Like I said, the only thing I was reticent about just jumping on board and saying, yeah, I'm going to do the Irish War of Independence and all that kind of stuff is I don't know because I'm American, I don't know what the feeling is in Ireland and England or the UK about this. You know, I don't know how, I didn't want to create something that creates controversy. You understand what I'm saying?
Of course.
So I don't want to make something where all the English guys are mad about it or something. So I don't know. I mean, I need to reach out. I'm going to reach out to my friends in Ireland and England and see what, if they're like, no, I don't care about that at all, then yeah, let's put it in there. But if they're like, no, it's a touchy subject, because when we were in Northern Ireland, there still is touchy subjects there about, you know, the English and the Irish and the Catholics. It's still a touchy subject. So like I said, I don't want to create a scenario where, you know, you create controversy or anger. That's not the goal here at all. This is a game. So I want people to enjoy it.
You know, okay, I come up with dumb ideas, but it might help market the game. You know,
yeah.
Blood and Valor.
No press is bad press. That's what you're saying.
Blood and Valor caused a riot at Historicon 2024. I mean, that would be like, no one's been able to do that, my man.
Nah, it's most guys. Nah, a bunch of old guys wandered around. I don't think it'll work.
That's why it would be so funny. Could you see some of those? So we've gotten 2 questions about campaign system. And he said he bought the rules last night. He really liked what he saw so far. Oh, here's Blood and Valor settles the Brexit debate. But, you know, you have the narrative scenarios and the historical scenarios.
Right.
You know, for a campaign game, 2 people are asking it. I think the game lends itself, especially because you have inexperienced troops and experienced troops.
Right.
That you could do a campaign game. What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I haven't really thought about it, but it's a definitely great idea. Whoever mentioned it, that it's a cool idea. And I've ironically, when I play other game systems, I actually like playing the campaign system. So it's kind of cool. You could actually, you know, start out with your lieutenant and basically basic troops, and then work your way up, and through experience, and your officer could get promoted, and they could gain new equipment, and you know, you could even start out early war. And then as they progress, they get new equipment and they get new tasks and stuff like that. It'd be kind of an interesting idea. I wrote it down. I think it's a kind of a neat idea. It's, you know, I gotta look and see how much are we filling up with the stuff we have, but you know, we could always add more. So make it a big fat book, which I'm sure people would like. But I like the idea of it. That's actually a good idea.
All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so where we ended off with the, you said Japanese Serbians.
Mm-hmm.
So, and is it all right if I ask you some questions about some of those lists and why you find them very interesting?
Sure.
And anytime you take your foot off a Kai's neck and let him talk, it's
no, he won't talk on camera. He's just wandering around. I just saw him.
But in real life, he doesn't shut up. So
I know.
I love that kid.
I don't think we can both fit in the screen, anyways.
And he could sit on your lap, sir.
No, that's not going to work.
So where did we leave off? So let's go with. I'm just going to pick lists and just start talking to you about it. So one of the lists that I'm going to collect an army on, and by the way, if you hit the vendor hall, there are some companies that are offering a percentage off that have some pretty good Great War minis. But the one that folks and No Dice No Glory have been asking me about all the time are the Austro-Hungarians. And I sent you a book on them. I know that you guys know a lot about them. To you,
right.
What makes them so interesting? And go over with how many different types of forces they're going to have in the game, because you could do a whole book on them.
Oh yeah, sure, of course. Let me look at my notes on them to make sure. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, basically, you know how every army has a kind of I tried to make every army have sort of a unique rule to give them all different kind of feel, because you know, in the basics, you know, a German rifleman, an Austro-Hungarian rifleman, a British rifleman, an American rifleman were not that different in training levels or equipment. Yeah, there were some that were inexperienced, more experienced, etc. But a basic guy wasn't. So you got to say, well, how do you make the lists unique? You know, how do you, you know, if 2 guys show up with all riflemen, how there's different feels? And that's where I wanted to put a unique historical or a unique kind of character to each list. So you have a different feeling for each list. So they play a little differently. And the Austro-Hungarians, you know, as the Austro-Hungarian army or the Austro-Hungarian Empire was made up of many nationalities. So their special rule is one of these positive, negative kind of special rules, and it'll be where their commanders cannot give orders to support units, right? But their support units, like their heavy machine guns, their specialized troops, etc., cost less than anybody else's army. So it's a reward and it's a risk, positive and negative. And that the idea of the name, and I haven't hammered it down, but it's going to be something like you know, the land of many nations. You know, so there's a lot. You know, there's a lot of you know, because they had so many different languages in the Austro-Hungarian army. But some of the troops that'll be in there, you have the Common Army, which is the mainline troops from the German provinces. You have Jaeger regiments, or Jäger, but Jaeger, which are elites, you know, hunters. Jaeger means hunter in German, I believe. Bosnia-Herzegovina regiments, which are also elites. Austrian Landwehr, which are inexperienced troops. They had stormtroopers. They called them stormtroopers. They weren't exactly like the German stormtroopers, but they had the concept of, you know, guys going forward and taking trenches and such. You have the Honvid, or Honvid. I don't know how you say it. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Honvid. These are going to be your Hungarian army. They have the same stats as the Common Army, but they'll have a slightly different special rule, which I'm still working out. And and then they'll have some cavalry too, you know, because the Austro-Hungarian in the very beginning were into cavalry, but they did a lot of their fighting up in the mountains, so cavalry didn't play as big of a role. But on the eastern front against the Germans, they did. I mean, the Russians, I'm sorry, on their eastern flank. And then I basically went over their, you know, specialized troops. I just noted down the names of their light machine guns and all that kind of stuff, their heavy machine guns. But that's basically, it'll be an interesting army because it'll be you can make it very varied and have all kinds of different troops, but you will have the problem of communications amongst your own troops. But like I said, your elites will cost less than other armies. So you might want to have a lot of really good fighters, but they're going to kind of do their own thing. They're not going to be able to get command points. But the positive is they could be kind of off on a flank, and you're not going to give them command points anyway, so you just let them do their own thing. And
I don't know if you mentioned it. I think Polish was in there. I think Marcin was working on that as well.
Yeah, he is there. He's there. I mean, he gave me he went overboard. He like broke the whole army down, and I'm looking at the paperwork he gave me. He gave me names of people. It's an interesting thing. You know, we look at history through basically British, you know, Western European English speakers. So when you try to find heroes from other countries, it's really hard because unless they're British, American, or French, they don't really talk about them. I had a hard time finding, you know, a Polish hero from World War I, but unfortunately Marcelin sent me this whole package with all kinds of guys, which I can't say their names at all because they're in Polish. But he really helped me out with that. And then some other guys really stepped up and helped me out with ideas. And that's why I've developed friends. Like I have two guys that I know are Russians. They live in Moscow, and they're actually gave me names of, you know, Russian heroes from not only the Imperial Russian Army, but the Red Army, and you know, I don't know if they talk about the White Army. They might now, but you know, things like that. Which is, it's hard to find that kind of stuff in English literature, you know, in English histories from, you know, as I said, from our point of view.
Yeah. So when you decided they had the Belgians in the 1914,
right?
I said, dude, I'll try to get you somebody, and we found that one guy, and I believe you had somebody reached out to you from.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I did the Belgians is there was a couple guys that I know, and they were complaining that nobody ever pays attention to the Belgian army in World War I, and they asked me on Facebook, and I said, ironically, we just did it, and it made them really happy because someone acknowledged the fact that they actually fought the entire war. They weren't. Although they gave up 95% of Belgium, but they kept fighting for the whole war. So they were happy that they could, you know, use miniatures and build an army representing where they're from. And ironically, they make some pretty cool Belgian miniatures out there. They actually have a cool, you know, a whole bunch of them. So, you know, the dog carts and all that kind of stuff. So I've seen a couple armies floating around that have been painted like that, and I think they're really neat.
Well, because they wore the blue with the black hats. They're probably the best dressed army in 1914. that you could take to a dinner.
The French would disagree with you, but yeah.
Yeah, but like, you know, the red pants wouldn't look good at a dinner party.
Yeah, sure. Wouldn't look good on the battlefield. I don't want red pants on. I'll tell you how much in a heartbeat.
So I think the Austrians are something that is just not gamed very much. I think that the fact that you're putting them in book 2, well, I mean, book 2, of course, it's the rest of the world, I think are going to be amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the Russians because, look, you know, we've all seen Dr. Zhivago, unfortunately. And it's a compelling story, but I mean, you have.
Well, that's Hollywood, too.
It's Hollywood. But
hey, you know what? Hey, I found out something interesting from the guys I was talking to in Russia. You know how we say something is Hollywood?
Yeah.
You know what they say in Russia?
It's Hollywood?
No, they say it's cranberry.
Why?
I don't know. That's just the term they use. It means the same thing, like Hollywood history, or they kind of fudge it, but they call it cranberry, which I found very amusing. So I like walking around saying, "Oh, that's so that movie was so cranberry."
Well, maybe you know guys in the Russian mob more than I do. I tend to stay away from them. But you know, you look at the Russians, and you have the Tsar's army. You got the whites. You got the reds. You got a lot of conflicts they were in throughout the period. Can you give us some details of how you're handling the Russians in the game?
Yeah, sure. The Imperial Russian Army, actually, believe it or not, in the beginning of the war, were actually there. They came from the classic. They were actually well equipped. They were, you know, they had strong cavalry arms, strong, you know, regular infantry, and they had a strong artillery arm. But their leadership was kind of weak. You know, that's what hurt them, you know, throughout the whole thing. You know, how many armies can we think of where the regular soldier is competent and a good soldier, but their upper ranks of leadership make mistakes? But in the Imperial Russian Army, I haven't really formulated what their rules going to be. I know a lot of game systems make them kind of stubborn, you know, and that kind of stuff. And I don't know if I'm going to go that with the Imperial Russian Army. But one thing I learned from talking to these guys, the Imperial Russian Army, 1915, you know, earlier was much better equipped. Post 1916, you know, after they lost Tannenberg and all that stuff, they kind of became a different army because they rushed tons of recruits to the front, and they were even the quality of the soldiers. They had a lot more new guys involved in it, you know, and fresh troops and stuff. So it kind of changed the dynamic of how capable they were. Although they did, you know, make some serious advances against the Austrians, but bad leadership, they pushed too hard and they overextended their lines. Well, but I'm going to do something along the lines. I haven't quite figured out their special rule. I know if we get into, you know, the skip the Imperial Army, but in the Russian Army, they're definitely going to have, I mean, not the Russian, the Reds, the Red Army in the Russian Civil War. I'm going to invent and create a new type of troop that's even like basically conscripts, you know, where they're 2 points a model instead of 3 points a model, and you could have a ton of them. But they're going to be core, but they'll only give you one command point because they're hard, or one, you know, point where you can bid. Yeah, initiative point. I can't remember my own rules. This guy crazy, but so you could have like a horde type army, like a ton of guys. Another thing I learned that was kind of interesting, like the Cossacks. You know, in most games, you think Cossacks, they think an all cavalry army.
No.
Yeah, they're not. They're actually not an all cavalry army. No, I know they're not. In the Russian army, in the Imperial army, a lot of Cossacks were cavalry. But if they weren't cavalry, they just put them in a regular Russian unit, and they would be, you know, just a rifleman, you know, a regular guy. But I'm going to build an actual Cossack army, and that'll be made up of horsemen and foot troops. They're, you know, in their regular armies, they weren't all mounted. So, but it'll be interesting. I'll make it where you can have a higher percentage of cavalry, which will be interesting to see if you want to play that against somebody with, say, an armored car or something like that, or a bunch of heavy machine guns. I don't know how well cavalry would work, but you could do that if you want to. Other thing
I don't paint horses, my man. You know that.
Yeah. They're easy to paint. I'm going to probably have a guard, like in the Imperial Russian Army, some kind of guards unit, like an elite kind of regular rifleman unit, but more of an elite type. The White Armies, that's all over the place. It's going to be interesting to see. I haven't really hammered these down yet. This is what I'm working on to try to get, because there's so many different varieties of them. And what I was thinking about doing is you take a generic white army, right? Which is basically riflemen and, you know, very generic kind of stuff, and then have different commanders. And if you take this specific commander, it affects how that army works on the battlefield. So if you take a commander, say, from Mongolia, well, you're going to have a lot more cavalry in your units, right? Or if you take, you know, a commander that used to be an ex-Imperial, you know, if you're part of some ex-Imperial Russian general's army, you'll be much more like the Imperial army. You know, you'll be much more structured. And I'm trying to figure out ways to do that. So you basically take a generic white army, and then you can make it look different depending on who's leading it and who and where they're from, like what part of the, because there's so many different factions. To put them all in, you know, in the book, it would just get overwhelming. You'd have them all over the place. And I'd rather have like sort of a core, and then you can branch out how you want to do it. But I haven't quite figured out how to do it where they're all balanced and they all make sense. Another army which I find interesting is the Green Army. The Green Army were basically made up of peasants in Russia that didn't want any, they were like, get off my land army. They didn't want anybody involved in anybody. They hated everybody, the Reds, the Whites. They were basically a bunch of armed peasants, like, stay away from us, which I find kind of interesting to play. Obviously, that army would be made up of lots of dudes with rifles and not a lot of, you know, command. Although they did have some heavy they did have some heavy machine guns and stuff, but they, you know, which they acquired through fighting and all that kind of stuff. I just ripped my headphones out. That was fun. Then the obvious one, like Mitch, actually, it was his idea, the Women's Death Battalion. I got to look about making a whole, like a force out of that, or maybe adding that as a possible, like an elite type unit to a, you know, an Imperial Russian army. And then, of course, the Czech Legion, which is, they're pretty amazing. They actually ran around all over Russia.
What a story there, right?
Yeah. The Czech Legion were basically, they were prisoners of war from the Austrians and volunteers that passed over to the Russians. And they didn't like the Austro-Hungarians that much anyways. They were sort of forced into their army, or they wanted an independent Czechoslovakia, or you know, as it is today, you know, the Republic of Czech Republic and Slovenia, or Slovakia, sorry. So there was over 70,000 of them by the time, and they were fully equipped, organized. You know, they had all their, you know, artillery support, the whole support structure. They were on a 70,000-man army. Well, Russia backs out of the war in 1917. Well, the Czechs are like, well, you know, the Russians tell them, or the Soviets tell them, hey, you know, give us all your guns and everything, you know, and you could go back to Austro-Hungary, wherever you want, just get out of here. And the Czechs are like, no, we're not going to give you all our guns. No. So the Czechs basically took over. They were running around in Russia. They took over the whole Trans-Siberian Railroad at one point. They stole the Russian treasury. They stole all their gold. So they went all the way to the east to Vladivostok, all the way in the east, and they basically worked a deal out where they gave the Russians back a percentage of their treasury and used the rest to pay for ships, and they shipped them all the way back around, all the way into France. And by that time, the war of it was over, and they were able to repatriate them to Czechoslovakia. But they're super neat. And that's where the whole armored train idea comes in and stuff, because, you know, like assaulting an armored train, like a Czech armored train or something, because they had a ton of armored trains. They basically were an organized force that stepped into that chaos of the Russian Civil War. Because they were so organized, they were able to do whatever they wanted, basically, which is crazy, having an independent foreign army running around in your country. But that's what happened. So it makes it pretty interesting to game them.
Well, it's not like anybody was in charge either. And,
no,
you know,
yeah, of course. Yeah. It was utter chaos after everything fell apart, you know, as civil wars usually are. So.
Yeah, there's so many little wars, you know, because you'd be able to do the Russo-Polish War, the Red War, and then, you know, you should mention that you're throwing in the armies of 1919.
Right, we're going to have kind of like the early army, like you could take a late war force, or, you know, and you could create an early army force. I'm going to have a framework where you could do the Americans and the British, the French, the Italians, all of them up in Archangel and all that stuff running, you know, in northern Russia. you kind of make that framework force, the American polar bears, as they were called. And they weren't supposed to fight, but they were fighting. So they were running around fighting people up there.
Which army are you most excited about?
Me?
Well, you get excited about things. I know. I've been there.
It just bounces back and forth. It's kind of hard to lock in on one.
It's like, which is your favorite kid?
Yeah, if I was going to make an army right now from the existing lists, I would probably do early war French, because I'm a big uniform guy. I like to paint, and I love Napoleonics. That's how I got started on all this. And I love the idea of painting all World War I guys with, red pants and, all these crazy colors. Or the Belgian army, because I just want the colors, Yeah. I just like how they look. And, from a purely visual standpoint, I'm not thinking about, how they're going to fight. The other one I was interested in, which I am going to do, is for game, so I could do demos, and I want to make it where we have a ton of miniatures to play big games. Is early war Germans, with their pickle hobs and all that kind of stuff. I think they look cool.
I have 50 of those guys.
Yeah. But my son Kai loves Italians because they wear half capes, so that's sexy, running around with that stuff on.
So let's talk about the Italians here for a little bit. The Italians had a very interesting army there in the Great War, and
right.
They actually had a treaty with the Germans and Austrians.
Right. Yeah.
And decided to their future
little flip flop there.
Little flip flop, and they have some interesting units. So I'm reading a book about the Arditi and the Sturmtruppen in the Isonzo. I used to live up there, so I'm fascinated. Like, you don't know how bad warfare can be until you see those mountains that they fought on.
I would not want to try to fight that environment. That's insane. But
some of them died because they fell off a mountain. But if you could tell these folks some of the flavors that the Italians are going to have. You see what I did there? The Italian food.
Flavors.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay, you're asking me questions I can't remember. You're bad. Because hold on. Because Kai actually wrote this list, and I can't remember what his special rule was.
Yeah, but I don't know the special rule. But is it okay if I share what you showed me not too long ago?
Yeah. Because we wrote it out, and now I can't remember for the life of me.
So I believe you're going to have all the support stuff is identical, but you're going to have your experience, your non-experience. You put in Alpini, Bersaglieri, and Arditi as assault troops.
Right.
And there's one of what was the Arditi? The guy that only had one leg.
Basiglieri.
Yeah,
he was a Basiglieri guy. He was a bicycle guy that only had one leg. Yeah, there was this crazy Italian guy that wanted to participate in the war, and he lost his leg as a young man, and he would ride a bicycle all over the place with one leg. He became somewhat famous throughout Europe. I'm trying to find his picture. I got it in here.
Go ahead.
And he wanted to fight for Italy in World War I, and he went up to the front, and he basically tried to join up, and they told him, no, you can't join up. And I don't know if you can see the picture. Can you guys can't see that. I don't think you can see that. Yeah, you can kind of see it.
Yeah.
He only has one leg.
Nice.
And of course I have his name and everything, but it's not here. Oh yeah, his name is Enrico Totti, T-O-T-I.
Wait, Enrico Palazzo?
No. So anyway, they told him, no, you can't join the army. You only got one leg. So, get out of here. So he went up to the front on his own. And then when they got up there, they told him, hey, what are you doing? You only have one leg. Get out of here. So they kicked him out again. And then he came back again. And then he actually got involved and helped, in combat and actually helping people pull him off the mountain and also with one leg. So there's he's a known, I mean, I don't know how known he is today in Italy, but at the time he was famous for his heroism, that he actually was up there with one leg hopping around trying to affect the Italian war effort. And so I want to add him in the game because he's a very unique character, so, and, it'd be kind of neat if somebody could sculpt him or whatever,
And there was a famous medic that I read a lot of books that he wrote that
You
served.
talk about Ernest.
Yeah. So I think you should make a special role for him called Papa, where
Yeah.
he's blind drunk
All the time, drunk all the time.
but he loves fighting.
Yes.
So you brought up something a few minutes ago, and Bill brings it up. Can you speak to the distribution and where to find miniatures? He ordered the book off of eBay, but if you could talk about distribution of the book, and let's go in where folks can find the miniatures, because you're right, some of these don't have lines, or
Right.
probably never will.
Well, I don't know where if you're in England, I know in England, Gavin Winspar, who has a store in London, actually stocks all our stuff. And if you just go on to Facebook or whatever, you could just go on the Facebook page and say, hey, I'm looking for stuff in England, and then I'll link them up to you, and you could talk to them and stuff. In America, obviously, you could always order anything from Firelock Games. The miniatures right now are being produced by Phalanx Consortium. The ones that we have, the metal ones, which they have the Americans, the Germans, and the French are out now. I'm actually, my son is painting some French for a commission right now, which are popping up on the Facebook. I also painted all the Americans. Phalanx Consortium to carry them, and Firelock Games is actually going to be comparing them. They're going to carry them also in conjunction, because you can buy the book at Phalanx Consortium or vice versa. You can also buy the book on, we have a PDF download, especially for guys like in Europe or Australia, which is kind of harder to get stuff. PDFs are a lot easier for them. Also, War Games Atlantic just came out with a line of miniatures, World War I Germans, and it's a box set of 30-something. How many guys are in there? I think it's 30 guys or 40 guys. I can't remember. And,
30.
It's 30
guys.
30, but it's like $35 a box, which is basically $1 a miniature. And they're pretty cool because they gave me some samples, which I was able to build. They're kind of cool because you can build them all kinds of different ways. With pickle hobs, you could build them with stall helms, gas masks. They're kind of, off-duty hat, the little flat round hat. And they have the weapons combinations. You could do the MG08-15, which is the light machine gun. They have MP18s on there. They have all kinds of cool stuff, room handle Mausers, that kind of stuff. So they're kind of neat. But the neat thing is like Phalanx Consortium makes a heavy machine gun for the Germans, which is brand new. They also make, other Germans, and they their German set, they match up. You can play them all together. You don't have to have it all just one or the other, whatever you want to do. I know there's a lot of companies that have been around for years that make World War I stuff. A lot of them are based in England. Brigade Games. I think Foundry makes them, but I don't know. I don't really get Foundry miniatures. I'm trying to think of some other ones.
So I just posted a link for Brigade Games. He has Woodbine.
Woodbine are nice stuff. That's nice stuff. That's Gallipoli campaign. They have Lawrence of Arabia stuff. Obviously the English and the British Empire and the Ottomans. Their stuff is nice. There's another one that's called Wee Wolf Miniatures. They make actually Russians, and they were working on Italians and Austro-Hungarians.
Hungarians are out, sir.
Yeah, so they have Austro-Hungarians, and they have, and I know they were working on Italians at one point. And the Wee Wolf miniatures, my son has some of them. They're actually they're pretty nice miniatures. Granted, some of these older companies, they're the older type miniatures, the hand sculpt, and they're not the more modern with the computer sculpting, where the Phalanx Consortium stuff is all computer sculpted, so you get those real clean lines, and the rifles and the weapons of the Phalanx Consortium stuff is spot on. They're super clean. I know Chris, who made them, he takes very good attention to detail to make sure it's the right rifle. It looks the right. The French have really long bayonets, except things like that, to make sure it's spot on. But then you might be nostalgic and kind of like the older style miniatures. But once again, in this game, as long as that miniature's base is 25 mil. You can put big ones, small ones. I've seen people use 15 millimeter miniatures and put 3 of them on a base to just call that, the base, and if that base, if they die, the whole thing dies,
I've heard it's all about the base.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. That being said, if you're going to play in a tournament, which if the conventions ever come back, I'd like to do tournaments. You're going to have the actual correct base sizes for tournaments. And, people are asking me about tanks and all this stuff. Most tournaments are going to be the infantry forces, unless there's a big calling where people want to bring tanks into them. We can always do that. I'll listen to what people want. And I was excited because I don't know if, I actually made medals for Blood and Plunder, but I'm going to make specific medals for Blood and Valor. So they're going to be actual tournament. That'll be, one of the things you win. Obviously, we'll have prize support for tournament wins. But those, I'll make the medals. So they're pretty unique. I've had people actually ask me if they could buy the medals, and I tell them, no, you got to win the medals. So that's the only way you could get them.
Or, you just, I know Dave Wolf has two of them. Steal them. So you can always steal them. So the other thing, too, about miniatures.
Somebody just asked about terrain. That's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
Terrain, obviously, for World War I terrain is you could use most World War II European terrain, But I just spoke with Ben from Foreground Terrain, and we were talking about making something that's sort of more World War I specific. And somebody just asked it. And I brought up the point. I said, if you could make a modular trench system, that would be probably kind of one that sits above the table, but you could just lay it down. A modular type trench system. And I was talking to Ben, and he was kind of excited about that thing. It was good, and Foreground makes really nice stuff. So that'd be kind of cool if they did that.
So the Foreground stuff that you guys are carrying for Blood and Plunder, I bought a bunch of that yesterday. That stuff looks amazing. So just one of the comments here. It's Murga Trenches. Steve Murga, before COVID hit, he and I were supposed to take, I have like $80 of stuff I bought for he and I to make trenches. So he's asking for trenches, but I don't know, man. I don't think he's that serious about trench work.
Just give Murga a shovel and send him out on the beach. Send him onto the beach.
So if you guys want part of the specials for this event, both Phalanx Consortium is having, I believe, a special to the end of the month, and Brigade Games is having a percentage off connected with this event. I put the links up there. You really got to hunt to find some of the miniatures, especially with the second book. I don't know how people are going to find some of those.
Well, if you think about it, obviously some of these smaller countries had very unique kind of uniforms. But other ones you could get away, like I mentioned earlier with the Portuguese. The Portuguese, their helmet was unique, but they also wore a Brody helmet. And they have kind of light blue uniforms, sort of like the French, but the uniforms are the English style. So you could definitely create an army out of them.
What about the Greeks with the pom-poms on the shoes, huh?
That'd be a little challenging, yeah. But but also the, what do you call it? Like some of the Balkan nations wore Adrian helmets, so you could play around with that. I mean, the ultimate, of course, in the perfect world, somebody would make miniatures for every single faction. One guy I know, the people at War Games Atlantic, who just made the Germans, they're making French next. And I was, yelling at him about trying to make like Russians, like kind of a generic Russian, which you could change head swaps to make them look more like Red Russians or more like White Russians or more like Imperial Russians all in one box set, which would be kind of neat. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of World War I stuff isn't as covered with miniature lines as some of the other things. There's a lot out there, but it's, some of the minute or smaller armies. Americans are another one. Barely anybody covers Americans. Now Phalanx has nice American models, so those are pretty nice.
Yeah, those things are nice. So, you bring up the War Games Atlantic. So I was excited about him doing some lesser known armies, but he made a like a Facebook poll, and folks are recommending like some really like one-off, not even Great War period armies. So I worry, because those models look pretty good. So we have a question here from Bill. Will the book have illustrations of some of the uniforms or some good reference books? Yeah, that is something like a lot of people have if you go on the Facebook group, I have posted a ton of books, especially for uniforms that I used when I was painting. But it's the same old thing, like, well, what color really was German field gray? And
I know.
it depends on who's doing the laundry and what time of the war it was. So, and then is Dave Wolf on? He painted his Turks in blue. There he is. He goes, yeah. He painted his Turks in blue, which, there's pictures of them in those uniforms. It's what the reservists wore.
Right.
And Bill's like, well, no one's going to get mad if I do it. I'm like, dude, anybody that gets mad is kind of an asshole anyway. I mean, it's your
the button counters. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for Great War, there are some really good, Osprey is one of them. There are some really good books out there. But like when guys are sitting there of what shade the British uniform is, yeah, you mean the day the Tommy got it, or after it was in a trench for 3 weeks,
or bleached out by the sun for 6 months. Yeah. There's always variations in uniforms, and that brings up another one. Scale. Like I saw a picture just I think today on Facebook. They showed like a German guy that was like 7 feet tall, who was a soldier, and then like a 5'4" or 5'2" guy.
I thought that was his son.
Yeah, exactly.
And that guy was not 5'2". That guy was.
Yeah, it was tiny. They found a tiny little human being to be the
so
shortest. But
the background story, right? That big guy was nuts over the other guy.
Really? That's a little weird.
Get it? Nuts. Okay.
Yeah, I get it. It was a horrible joke. It's a dad joke. Good job.
Yeah, good. It was really good. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the beauty of this period, because maybe for World War II, German panzers of the Grossdeutschland division in July of 1943, that a rivet counter could say it shouldn't be this color, but in the Great War, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like if I was playing against someone and they had, a friend of mine, he wanted to play the Belgian army, and he has Belgians from bolt action Belgians, which are they're late war, obviously. And he's like, could I bring these? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think anybody would have a hard time with you. I mean, you can't bring tanks and stuff, but a basic rifleman, it's close to, it's close. It's not exactly, because nobody makes a later war Belgian. I believe the Belgian stuff that's out there is actually all really early war stuff. So, I'm not like that. If you come to a tournament with a bunch of just circles and say these are guys, no, but if you want to
respect the game.
Yeah, of course, and try. And obviously, if they don't make a miniatures line, it's up to you to either, and you really want to play that specific faction, if you are creative and come up with some cool ideas and use miniatures maybe from a slightly different time period that are available and stuff, and you can make it, and so your opponent knows what they're playing against. I don't see any problem with that at all. And then you could start bothering the miniatures manufacturers to try to make more of that specific time period. I mean, the fact that we finally see World War I 28 millimeter plastic miniatures is a good sign, because you can, with plastics, you can really do a lot of converting and stuff, it's easier than metals. Although metals you can convert also, but that's a good sign that people, it's available. Somebody finally did it, and it would be interesting to see how well they do with that particular line, and I think that'll gauge War Games Atlantic if they'll make more. I know they're planning on making the French, which is surprising me, because War Games Atlantic is actually an English company, and they haven't made British guys yet, which is normally the standard. Let's make British guys, which So, but I guess maybe they realize there's a lot of companies that make British miniatures, so why go head to head with them when you can make something that's unique? I don't know.
I'd want to do kilts anyway, with the British Army, but as much as I love reading about the Great War and find the history, I don't have an army that can play in the trench. So I kind of like that. And to do research on what the Ascaris were and when, it was a lot of fun painting those guys. I didn't want to paint them where I'd be probably called a racist at an event, because I can't even paint white dudes most of the time, my man.
Yeah.
My guys look like zombies all the
Actually,
time.
from being from painting a line, painting black skin or dark skin is challenging. It's because you don't want to make them look like because white people aren't white and black people aren't black. They're
Right.
browns and pinks, different all kinds of shades. So it can be done, but it is challenging. And I've seen some guys paint stuff that's just like, whoa, wow, that you painted that guy black, like the color black. They're not that color, but
Christopher said he just painted some Senegalese, which when the new book comes out, you'll be able to use them in Africa.
Well, you can use
them now.
Yeah, in the French army, sure, as assault troops. Yeah, you can use them.
Yeah, and that was the other one too. So I'll just give you for instance. So somebody's like, I don't remember the name. Yeah, this is bullshit because I wanted to do a whole Harlem Hellfighters army, and they're only in there as assault troops. And I said, okay, right, because we have Black Death, and we wanted to get Lewis Henry Johnson in the book, and that's the best way to do it.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with painting the rest of your French forces as the Harlem Hellfighters. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
So they're in the game.
Yeah, you just have to, if you wanted to do that, like make it just all Harlem Hellfighters, for example, you could, you just got to make sure that your opponent knows which ones are your assault troops or which ones are your regular troops. And you're basically playing them like regular French, but they're just painted, they're a different model. But I wouldn't have any problem with that at all. I mean, that's creative if you want to do that. But you got to understand, too, we're talking about these like we're doing whole national armies. These are a small ad hoc group of guys doing a specific mission where they're pulling them from different units that are available to them. So it's not, we got to have Army Corps structures and all that stuff. No, so you could have, 3 snipers for the Turks and a bunch of guys with rifles. That could be done because that's what they had on hand to make that happen. So
at some point, gamers have to step up and remember it's their game once they buy it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and the other thing that and I know you fielded all kinds of questions. When we first came up with the idea of Blood and Valor, everybody's like, "Oh man, I want World War I in trenches. It's going to take forever. Who wants to play that?" The other one was guys would be like, "Well, if it doesn't have 500 miniatures on the side, I don't want to play." You could play a World War I game with 1,000 miniatures on the side if you wanted to, but that's a totally different type of game. You're not going to sit down in an evening and play 2,000 miniatures on the board game and get it done. That's just not going to happen. If you want to go to a convention and spend the weekend playing that game, sure, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. So that was my whole goal, is to create something that gives you a flavor of World War I. You learn some history about World War I and some of their tactics, and can play a game in an evening, or you can play 2 games, depending on how small you want to play it. And that was the whole idea, the concept of the thing. So it allows people to play all these kind of unique stuff. And I can't tell you when it first started how many people would tell me, man, I had these miniatures laying around in my house forever with no game to use them for. Now I can use them for something,
Yeah, I was one.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, I mean, if you wanted to build Germans, it's $35 and you have an army. You can make a whole army out of that War Games Atlantic box easily, with all the different factions and everything. You could do, all the different types. Or if you like metals, like some guys really like metal miniatures, for I think it's $65 on Phalanx Atlantic. You could buy, not Phalanx Consortium. I'm screwing them up. Phalanx Consortium for $65. You buy that box, and now you have a whole army, 150-point army. Those are designed to be 150 points. And so there you go. You could just play right there, which is kind of cool. You could just, buy a box and then play the game. You don't have to buy 500 miniatures or all kinds of stuff. Although most of us always collect, 5, 6, 7 armies of everything.
No, really?
Yeah.
It's the biggest lie. I'm just going to do one army.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's impossible. Because as soon as you finish that one, you start going, ooh, that looks cool. And then you start the next one. Yeah, I know. I do the same thing.
Right.
I'm guilty of that.
How do you do the Schutztruppe without the British in Africa with the king?
Right, of course, yeah, because you want to have the other side. So, yeah,
you have to have the other side. So Chris asks, how much marketing budget did it cost to convince DreamWorks to release 1917 at the same time as Blood and Valor? Oof.
Well, they called me 3 years ago, and I gave them the idea for the movie. That was just a happy coincidence. We got lucky with that.
Yeah,
And I love that movie. That was a great movie, but that was just luck, pure luck.
yeah, that convinced 3 guys to play my demo. Well, look,
Good.
you good. You know, hey, we'll take the community everywhere I am. So look, you guys have been asking a lot of questions. Believe it or not, there was. If you guys have any questions about what's in a particular list that I have not asked Rufus yet, or anything else, please shoot it in there. Even if you guys have played the game, what is one thing that you found surprising that the game has as you played it? Just like the whole thing about if I run my troops in front of 2 machine guns, I die. That shouldn't have been that surprising, but just shoot the questions there. The armored car thing that we talked about how you want to handle armored cars. I don't know how solid that is. I don't know if you want to talk about it here.
Yeah, I can. I've been doing a lot of research on them already.
I thought it was really neat the way you're going to handle it.
Yeah, the armored cars, because there are literally hundreds of different types of armored cars in World War I. And also in the Russian Civil War, they would take a truck and bolt armor onto a truck and put a gun on it, so it's very quickly, so how do you make specific, rules for each one? I'm not going to do that because it'd be impossible. So basically you would build an armored car out. And if you know of an armored car, say we'll use the Rolls-Royce, the British Rolls-Royce, which had a machine gun and a turret on the top of the armored car. So you'd pay an X amount of points for the car itself. You pay an X amount of points for the armor, and then depending on how many guns you want to put on it, and I'll have a match. You can't put 45 machine guns on an armored car, but you could put 1 or 2, say, in a turret, and you'll pay more for the turret, or you can fix them forward or fix them rear or fix them to the sides, whatever you want to do. And then that'll figure out how many points it costs for that actual armored car. Armored cars will have issues with rough ground. Obviously they didn't drive them in trenches. They couldn't cross trenches. They couldn't cross a lot of real rough terrain. They could do okay, like the Rolls-Royce in the desert could do all right in certain situations, kind of relatively flat ground. But going through a swamp with an armored car is not going to work. And in typical one of the armored cars, the Russians, of course, put a 76 millimeter gun on their armored car.
So it was able to go backwards really fast.
Yeah, it shot out the back. But the thing is, what I want players to do is they see a specific armored car and they go, oh, I really like that specific one. And that's from the country that I want to play. And I'll put a couple examples in the book, and then you could say, oh, and then you could look at it and go, okay, it has, 1 forward fixed gun and 1 rear fixed gun. Per se, with 45-degree arcs front and back, and you could actually build that car in your list, using the components to put them in there and actually create that car. And then you could do things like, well, I don't have enough points. My specific model, this specific car, the rear gun was removed, so you're going to take that off, and then you'll get a sink of points to fit into your list.
So when you told me you were going to do that, I thought it was a brilliant idea. Because it's hard to find some of these very obscure armored cars. But I found a guy that was selling 2 of the Rolls Royces.
Right.
And they were relatively cheap. And I'm just going to paint, 1 blue, 1 red, if a metaphor, and play those in games because I think it would be fun to play around with it. Also, it's great eye candy to throw on the table. But,
I love tanks. And a lot of guys ask about tanks. I love tanks. Just the reality of tanks in World War I is they only got 1 engagement in the whole war against each other. So I didn't want the game to become a tank game. That's not what it is. But you could play with them, like I said, and they look great on the table, and they're fun to paint. And they make the models out there, so why not use them? And they make armored car models. They float around, so you can use them too.
Right. And, a lot of people were screaming for the armored cars. So there was, not going to mention any names, somebody was like, you cannot do Lawrence of Arabia in the desert without the armored cars. So I remember asking him, and I know somebody here is going to get upset about this. How many armored cars do you think, because I did my own research, how many armored cars do you think there were in the desert? And dozens. So I went, I looked, I actually called somebody that I knew that had a connection to the Imperial War Museum. And I go, so how many Rolls Royces did you think he had? And like I said, the answer was dozens. And they said that at any one time, they probably was no more than 6 to 8 ever working.
That actually worked. Yeah.
That actually worked. But it became iconic because where the folks that took pictures they were in cars. So they took a lot of pictures of the armored cars because they were always with them.
Right, of
And
course.
it was in a movie, so it's like not that iconic. So, but you can build as many armored cars as you want in the game.
Yeah, thinking of pictures like the Belgian armored car corps that they sent to Russia to help the Russians fight the Germans. There's lots of pictures of them with their armored cars because, of course, every time they took a photo, they take it with a car.
Right.
You know, they wouldn't just take a picture of them standing around. You know, it's like a cavalry guy takes a photo with his horse. You know, so
let me see what we have here. Some questions we just don't have an answer. Could you force phalanx into Europe? The Romans tried that 6,000 years ago. Didn't work out. Any chance of bringing early anti-tank weaponry into the game, like the German Mauser 13? Once again, tanks are in narrative play.
right.
And having play tested with some of the tanks, using both action tanks with them, I mean, they look cool on the table, you know, but they're beatable. And then Paul, sorry, have to ask, say, whose call it was to make the font on the book so small. Ended up having to buy it in PDF as well so I could read it. Maybe I'm just getting too old. Somebody agreed with him, and so make the font bigger in the other book.
I think the font's the same size as Blood and Plunder. I didn't. I mean, that wasn't my call to make the size of the font or anything.
Yeah.
That was Lily who lays out the books and stuff from the thing. I mean, I've never had a problem with it, but I don't know how to fix it. I mean, I could bring it up to them and say maybe possibly a bigger font. I don't know what size font they actually used. So.
And then also realize bigger font means books become bigger, more expensive to ship, more money. So
more pages.
More pages. So
yeah.
It's kind of there. So we got about 14 minutes left. We're in slop time. We don't have to use it. So the questions, well, it looks like you got a PDF. So I guess you.
One person asked earlier, and I don't know if we 100% answered it. He was asking about reference photos and reference material in the books. We're probably not going to put like specific reference photos of pictures. Obviously, we'll put painted miniatures and stuff like that people could follow. And if you see painted miniatures in the books, and if you ever want to know what colors, because most of the miniatures are actually painted by me or my son. If you want to know what colors they are, we'll tell you. I mean, it's not a secret, like how we painted them. But believe it or not, a lot of the photos and stuff are actually copyrighted, you know, for reference photos and stuff. So that opens up a whole can of worms about putting, you know, those kind of things in there. That's why we kind of shied away from it, and we wanted to get you interested in the history, and then you know, you could do your own research on colors and stuff like that. And obviously, Facebook is a great tool for that. You know, people will answer questions like, "Hey, what color you use for that or this?"
Yeah,
etc. And so there probably won't be a lot of reference, like uniform reference photos in the book. You know, there shouldn't be.
Right. So Bill asked the question, a list of colors. I really recommend, and this is really not to be lazy or anything, throwing out the question on Facebook, just because you have so many painting pros out there, and telling you a color sometimes doesn't help you out. Is what am I diluting it with? What am I, you know, because.
Well, a big question with color too is make sure you always ask what undercoat did you use? Like if you spray it black, brown, gray, white, you know, that'll affect how the color looks big time. You know, if you go over a white versus a black, it's going to look very different.
So I would definitely go to the Facebook group, which is really easy to find, Blood and Valor Firelock Games. The thing about reference books, I guess, Bill, you're talking about uniform reference books. Like I said, Osprey is a good one. The very detailed reference books, like I found for the Austro-Hungarians, not easy to find. Some of these books are very obscure. Also, if you don't speak Turkish or German, you're good luck finding some of these things. And a lot of it is, there just really don't seem to be a lot of books written about that. And also be careful when you Google search, because you will find, Turkish Great War uniforms. It is different than finding Ottoman World War I uniforms. You'll get two
Right.
different searches in there. So, are there some great books? There are. You can always drop me a line, and I can recommend a ton of books to you. But one of the ones is the Compendium of Uniforms of the Great War. And unless somebody leaves one to you in the will, you're not going to be able to touch it for less than $180 to $200.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's
just paint them gray. Screw it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing about it. Plus, somebody wrote an entire book. I think it's from Schiller Press about the different dyes of German field gray based upon the year and the factory that made the uniform.
Jesus.
And it was done before digital photography was put into books, so it doesn't look that great in there too. But the guy wrote a whole book on it, and yeah.
So, I like that somebody just put up there, paint your army in grayscale like the old war film. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be kind of neat.
Yeah,
nobody, also said, hey, they might be old. I don't know if you had a deal with both Peter Jackson and Sam Mendes to hype your book.
Right. Yeah, because they actually use pretty cool. Their colors are spot on, supposedly, and they shall not grow old. The Peter Jackson thing.
Yeah, then they researched the hell out of it. So, my thing is, as you go on the Facebook page, I'm not making fun of anybody, but there's some guys I hope answer a post I make because their stuff's dead on, and they seem to have the same Vallejo paints I have.
Right.
So, one guy was like, "Oh, you need to make it like oxide orc, fungus," and I'm like, "Dude, don't got that color." So, yeah, it's fun stuff. Well, is there any else thing you want to bomb us with there, my friend?
Oh, well, I was just talking to Mike Tunez. Our goal is to have this book out by the end of the year. So it's not that far off. So that's the goal. We're shooting for right at the end of the last quarter of the year, the very beginning of the first quarter of next year. So basically a year after the first book came out. It would have been earlier, but COVID-19 basically slowed this whole thing down, unfortunately.
Christopher asked, any book 3 super early teasers? Chris, you heard him read all the lists, all the forces that are in there, that there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing left. That
I have, whoa, hey. I can tell them what we've been talking about, what I'm thinking about.
Go ahead. I mean, for the Great War itself.
No, for the Great War, no. We're covered up to that.
Stop it, Murga.
Yeah, things I was thinking about. Basically, if they're bolt-action rifles, artillery, and foot troops, this game system will work for them. Once you get into like World War II with a lot of heavy mechanized stuff, it kind of throws a monkey wrench and air power and all that kind of stuff. But things I was thinking about is actually Spanish-American War, 1898 in there, which is not that far forward. Russo-Japanese War, which would work.
So if can I tell you something I was going to pitch to you?
What? Tell me.
I was going to save it for your birthday. Boxer Rebellion.
Yeah, Boxer Rebellion too. I've thought about that too. Because it all works, because it's bolt-action rifles, and it's, the technology is not that different than what we're dealing with right here. Spanish Civil War is a possibility. Nobody's ever touched it. It's just a little more mechanized, and it would have to be I'd have to do some revamping with the rules a little bit, but that is a possibility. But you could definitely do the Spanish-American War, but I would do it as a kind of one book. You'd have the Spanish-American War, the Boxer Rebellion, the Russo-Japanese, all would kind of be in one book, because I don't think any of them you could make just a single book out of. I get maybe the Boxer Rebellion you actually could, but
Boer War.
The Boer War, yeah. See, that would work too. That would actually work, because it's basically bolt-action rifles, cavalry, beginnings of machine guns.
So Chris brings up Franco-Prussian, and I know I answered that, where there is a difference in technology between Franco-Prussian, because even though they were breech-loading rifle is not a bolt-action rifle.
Right. Well, they had the needle rifles, but they didn't work quite as well. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And that they fought very linear. That it's a skirmish game.
Yeah, and the French use basically the Militus or whatever it was, their early version of a machine gun. They use them like artillery. They didn't understand how to use them. And it is much more linear, like you say, dudes and lines advancing, which is pretty drastically different. Not saying that I wouldn't ever write a book about that. I think it's an actually interesting time period, but I don't know if it would fit the way the Blood and Valor rules are written right now. You'd have to do some pretty serious alterations to the rules to make it work.
And as I said back then, a lot of other books already do this poorly because it's a very misunderstood period of time, because it's 6 years past the Civil War. Some things have changed, some things have not. So, but
yeah, somebody said something interesting. Yeah, the Spanish-American War, I forgot the company, but there are miniatures made out there for the Spanish-American War, which is pretty neat. You know, and you have the Philippine version, you know, on that too. So I forgot the name of the company. Somebody makes them though. They're pretty cool miniatures.
Yeah, there's so many good miniatures. All right, so where can they find you?
No, I'm on Facebook. So
yep. So it's go to firelockgames.com to order Blood and Valor. You can get the PDF version. The miniatures, we mentioned some. Phalanx Consortium did them specially for Blood and Valor.
Right, they did, yes.
You guys have any questions or want to yell at Rufus or myself?
Another thing, Phalanx Consortium actually has all the tokens and stuff too. Not saying you have to use those tokens. You could use your own versions, but they make a full token set for the game too.
Okay. Go hit them there to find. If you have any questions of the game, just please go to the Facebook group. It has been amazing. It really are guys trying to get and grow the hobby, trying to get one another interested in it. Rufus, you are closing out our the first ever HMGS CyberWars. I would like to thank you and everybody from Firelock Games
of course.
for participating.
Thanks for putting it on.
No problem. HMGS would like to thank you guys. This will be on YouTube as soon as I finish dinner. So, but thank you very much. And we will see you guys. We may be doing this again in November, so we'll talk about it later.
All right, great. That sounds good. I'm always down. So thanks.